Order, order. Sarah Dyke to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered the potential merits of government support for small abattoirs. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair, Sir Desmond, and I would like to thank the Backbench Committee for scheduling this important debate. The abattoir industry is at crisis point. In 2023, there were just 60 small abattoirs, those with a throughput of less than 5,000 livestock units per year left. And according to a 2022 Food Standards Agency report, small abattoirs are closing at an alarming rate of 10% per year, meaning that within a decade, they may well disappear altogether. To give an idea of the scale of the issue, in 2007, there were nearly 100 small abattoirs, but by 2023, this fell to around 60. The remaining small abattoirs face immense and multifaceted challenges to keep their facilities open for business. A study by the National Craft Butchers in 2021 found that 59% of small abattoirs expected to shut down within 5 years unless they received government support. The loss of these essential rural businesses poses major problems for local food infrastructure, animal welfare, biodiversity and food security. A resilient, shorter, farmer-focused supply chain requires small abattoirs and butchers who have connections with local restaurants, pubs, butchers and retailers. And local livestock producers, more than ever, need a well-distributed network of small abattoirs that offer private kill services for farmers who wish to add value by marketing and selling their meat direct to consumers, or farmers who breed rare or native breeds, who often are not able to use larger processors. But 2/3 of these farmers have reported issues in accessing appropriate abattoir services. Meanwhile, 1/3 of respondents to an abattoirs users survey from the Abattoir Sector Group reported that their most local abattoir has already closed. This is devastating for so many farmers. Sir Desmond, small abattoirs continue to deal with increased costs such as energy costs and, of course, recently the increase to employer national insurance contributions that threatened the viability of their businesses. But they are also hampered by an expensive and punitive regularity system that isn't suited to the nuances that smaller processes need to operate under. Earlier this week, I was invited to visit Downland's traditional meats in Sussex by Hugh Broom, a local farmer and an old Harper Adams University friend of mine. Downland's is a small abattoir processing under 5,000 livestock units per year. It is vital for the local food infrastructure in the area. Luke Smith, who runs the business, served over 2,000 customers in February, with people coming from as far as Essex to access his services. And with the recent closure of the Newman's Abattoir in Farnborough earlier this year, farmers in the Isle of Wight are being forced to travel further afield to abattoir facilities on the mainland, further increasing their costs as transporting livestock off the island by ferry is very expensive. And many of them now are indeed going to Downlands. The demand has grown so much that many farmers are now facing long waiting times to get their animals booked in for slaughter. And this is a scenario that is replicated right across the country. Yes, I will.
I'm grateful, Sir Desmond, and the Honourable Lady is making an excellent speech. And I share her concerns as the MP for the Scottish Borders, a vast area. Many of my farmers and food producers face those same challenges. And I agree with her points around animal welfare and also supporting the rural economy. But I should also agree that local abattoirs also help the environment because the carbon footprint of food production is also reduced.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. I absolutely agree. Reducing food miles and carbon sequestration is absolutely essential. And small farmers who supply into those local markets are doing such a sterling work in exactly that, reducing those food miles. But going back to Luke and Downland's abattoir, Luke is struggling to keep up with demand for so many different reasons. Recruitment is an issue. Retention of staff is an issue because there's been such a dramatic decline in people opting to work in skilled labour roles in the food sector and including slaughtering and butchery. Also, the restriction in the size of the facility, his facilities that he has, is restricting his output, and coupled with the fact that much of his ageing equipment in the facility wasn't built to withstand the amount of throughput he is driving in his business now, and it's in desperate need of investment. While I was there visiting earlier this week, actually, one of the cold stores had a major fault and it had to be closed. The impact of that was that carcass hanging space couldn't be used, and obviously that had a massive knock-on effect on what was already a really, really busy day. And most shockingly, Luke spoke passionately about some of the challenges he faces every day due to the framework that businesses like his must operate within. Currently, the Food Standards Agency charging system is based on the hours of on-site vet attendance. Abattoirs are charged a set hourly fee, irrespective of animals slaughtered, with discounts currently available depending on how many hours are used. Smaller sites with a throughput of less than 1,000 livestock units aren't required to have a full-time OV attendance, and so the majority of their hours will be covered by a 90% discount. But those that serve more than 1,000 livestock units will see the fees increased considerably. In June 2025, the FSA will have to decide whether to launch a public consultation on the discount going forward or to accept the Treasury's desire to remove it. The Association of Independent Meat Suppliers has warned that the estimated full costs will lead to the closure of 40% of the small abattoirs left in England and Wales. This comes on top of the FSA increase in inspection fees of around 20% that took place from April this year. So I'd like to ask the Minister if he would ensure the continuation of the small abattoir discount on inspection charges so that small abattoirs can remain financially viable. Many small abattoirs feel penalised by the FSA, with constant inspections bringing up issues that weren't found in their most recent audit, receiving enforcement notices that cost yet more money to alter bits of equipment or add a bit of plastic roof or a bit of horsehair to the bottom of the door. And all the while, the FSA provides abattoirs with no statutory right to appeal. Those in the industry have told me that they act as judge, jury and executioner. The frustration is palpable. The FSA charge is on a time recording system, providing their inspectors little incentive to deliver an efficient system. While many invoices they charge are often incorrect or fail to match up on their timesheets. So the abattoir then has to reread these, approach the FSA, get them changed, then the invoices are reprocessed, and off they go again. It's hugely frustrating for a small abattoir who simply don't have the numbers of staff they need to be able to make these changes or indeed keep up with the FSA. So forcing them to comply with a system that isn't suited for their business model. Now, like many farmers and smallholders in Glastonbury and Somerton, I use my local small abattoir, Strap Lane, in Wincanton, to process my lamb. They are only allowed to kill between the hours of 6 a.m. and 12 noon, and only when the on-site vet is present. Now, I was told that on one Monday morning, the busiest day of the week for them, the OV turned up late, as invariably they do, as I hear. By 12 noon, they had slaughtered all but one lamb. At exactly 12 noon, the OV instructed them to stop immediately. despite knowing that the only reason that the work wasn't finished was because of their own late arrival. The lamb was returned to the lairage area, had to be collected by the farmer, who then had to return it on the next slaughter day. The welfare impact on this was clearly significant, as well as the inconvenience to everybody involved. Now, this is just one small example of the difficult environment small abattoirs must survive in. So I implore the Minister and other honourable and right honourable members across the House to visit a small abattoir and find out more about the difficulties that they face. So, Desmond, fractious working relationships and the financial frustrations with the FSA play a significant part in the reason why some small abattoirs have shut down or are indeed considering closing, leaving the local food supply without a critical piece of infrastructure. The resulting impact is felt most heavily on local farmers. The Environment Agency is working with farmers to find solutions to these issues, so it's high time the FSA starts to do the same. There is no question that food safety must come first, but this must be achieved by working with small abattoirs, not punishing them at every turn. We need the FSA to build positive and mutually beneficial working relationships with small abattoirs to ensure both food safety and food security, whilst enabling the abattoir to be as efficient and profitable as it can be. So, Desmond, the FSA does not seem to be concerned with the important role small abattoirs play as a vital piece of the local food infrastructure. It appears that they view them as a difficult stakeholder when compared to larger centralised processors. So there's a clear conflict of aims and interests here. And I believe this is where DEFRA can act to set a framework that values the contributions that small abattoirs make to local food systems. DEFRA have previously noted that they recognise the vital contribution a thriving abattoir network plays in achieving a resilient food supply chain, and that they would work with abattoirs of all sizes in tackling the challenges they face. Therefore, I would like to ask the Minister to explain where small abattoirs sit within DEFRA's future farming roadmap. And I would urge the Minister to set out how he will support small abattoirs as they deal with the difficult challenges that they face. So, Desmond, I ask this because small abattoirs themselves should be recognised as a critical livestock infrastructure piece that provide a diverse range of services. Now, I recently spoke to Gavin Keane from Blackmore Vale Butchery, a multi-award-winning butchery based in Henstridge in Glastonbury and Somerton. Gavin has carried out a study of abattoirs in the local area, and he told me that there are just 6 abattoirs that provide private kill services for farmers which are semi-local to the constituency. And if any of them were to close, it would present a major logistical challenge to the local food infrastructure. And concerningly, like Downlands in Sussex, nearly all of these abattoirs are operating at or close to capacity, leaving farmers with long waiting lists to get their livestock booked in. So it's critical that the UK has a network of abattoirs in areas of production offering services and processing, allowing value to return to the farm, to allow farmers to retail their own meat, because this can add a significant markup to their produce. So the closure of abattoirs that offer private kill will hit and can hit farm revenues hard and limit farmers' ability to diversify their incomes. The Liberal Democrats are clear that this network of small abattoirs are an important asset for our rural communities. We have called for a £1 billion package to be added to the farming budget to support the agricultural sector. The Liberal Democrats also passed a motion at Spring Conference this year that affirms our commitment to upholding the high animal welfare standards in British farming, including through support for small abattoirs. Yeah. So, Desmond, private kill services offered by small abattoirs allow farmers to add value to their produce by enabling them to retail the meat themselves. And a survey from the Royal Countryside Fund found that farmers using private kill services in England were able to add significant value, from £56 for an individual sheep and up to £3,775 for cattle. Now, according to the Rare Breed Survival Trust for rare and native breed farmers, the continued existence of small abattoirs is vital. Breeding rare and native breeds provides significant public good, from increased biodiversity to high welfare, low input meat production. But if smaller abattoirs offering private kill close, many native breed farmers will also need to change their business practices, given that 90% of native breed producers rely on this service. Native breeds mature more slowly than commercial breeds, and many larger abattoirs won't take over 30-month-old cattle, while horned cattle and large pigs are regularly banned from large abattoirs. So if we want to support agroecological farming, we must ensure there is diversity within our livestock farming. It's not just about retaining important historical and cultural breeds, of course. It's also about recognising the important role biodiversity plays in the future of farming. So, Desmond, given the precarious financial position of farmers across the country, the loss of private kill options could be devastating. In fact, a British Farming Union members' survey from March last year found that direct sales are such a critical component of some farming businesses that without their sales, their business would cease to exist. Let's not be under any illusions. Farmers are still reeling after the hammer blows that were the family farm tax, the employers' national insurance contributions that were announced in the autumn statement, in the autumn budget, and then most recently the abrupt closure of the SFI scheme, leaving some farmers' businesses' plans utterly devastated. But farmers have been at the receiving end of some terrible decisions, many of them made by the previous Conservative government. Following the botched transition from basic payments, farmers have just about managed to struggle on. The last Conservative government proved themselves to be inept at supporting British agriculture, while the current Labour government are proving that they just don't understand the industry. Now, the Liberal Democrats were disappointed to see the government fail to replace the Small Abattoir Fund, which closed in September 2024. So, Desmond, I believe if this government are serious about supporting British agriculture, then a great opportunity presents itself today to step up and recognise the crucial role that small abattoirs play in the food supply chain. So, Desmond, I'd also like to touch on some of the workforce planning issues the small abattoir sector faces, the impact of which will only increase over the coming years. Working in a small abattoir is very different to working in a larger processor. In a small facility, employers are expected to be able to carry out a multitude of different jobs, as opposed to a larger abattoir where employees work in a line system, generally specialising in performing just one task. The lack of skilled labour in the meat sector has dire implications for food security and makes it harder to reach our environmental and sustainability goals. So, Desmond, 1 in 4 food and drink workers are due to retire within the next year, while the average age of a small abattoir operators is between 60 and 70 years old. And in line with Henry Dimbleby's National Food Strategy, we must invest in training and education for the food industry. And the Liberal Democrats are clear that we need to invest in workforce planning to ensure that we have enough vets, abattoirs, slaughtermen and farm workers to meet the UK's needs. This is a crucial element of UK food security. The government's own review recommends implementing a comprehensive strategy to improve awareness of the opportunities in the food supply chain. Currently, the system does not make it easy for abattoirs to take on apprentices, nor is it appealing for those that seek to undertake training. Abattoir apprenticeships only go up to level 2, and apprentices receive a meagre £6,000 a year, which is nowhere near sufficient to cover training, travel and accommodation, and is hardly an incentive to enter the trade. So I would welcome the Minister's comments today on the steps his department are taking to improve the workforce planning in this sector. So Desmond, we must focus on the long-term viability of these crucial elements of the livestock infrastructure. So does the Minister agree with me that the UK-wide local network of abattoirs are vital for food security, animal welfare and the profitability of our farmers? Could he also confirm that in order to sustain and grow the network of abattoirs, he will ensure that the government's existing small abattoir working group will take a proactive focus on delivery, working with both local and national governments? And if so, will he commit to regularly meet with the co-chairs of the industry and government working group to give this crucial issue the attention it so clearly deserves? So, to conclude, Sir Desmond, it's clear that small abattoirs are central to our local food supply chain, and there will be a dire impact if we lose them. We need DEFRA to step up and frame their importance in local food infrastructure. We need long-term workforce planning and a system that meets the needs of livestock producers and proactively works with stakeholders throughout the supply chain. If not, farming businesses and the supply chain will suffer. Thank you.
Hear, hear. The question is that this House has considered the potential merits of government support for small abattoirs. Katie Lamb.
Thank you, Sir Desmond. Over the past 50 years, abattoirs have rapidly vanished. More than 90% of them have closed. Across the country, family farms that once relied on local slaughterhouses now face round trips of over 100 miles just to kill a handful of animals to provide the meat for our tables. That drives up costs and, ironically, increases the stress on livestock that our welfare laws seek to mitigate. Alongside Labour's family farm tax, the closure of the Sustainable Farming Initiative and the end to the Fruit and Vegetable Aid Scheme, this additional burden is pushing many of our farmers to the financial and mental brink. Small abattoirs are essential to our regional supply chain. They enable the sale of high-welfare local meat. They underpin farmers' ability to add value and differentiate themselves in the market. They are also vital to preserving native rare breeds, the small-scale mixed farming and the rural way of life that defines my constituency, the Weald of Kent. Let's consider for a moment what a small farmer in the Weald, someone rearing Romney sheep, say, actually has to do simply to sell meat from the animals they breed and raise. First, they must register their land with the Rural Payments Agency for a county parish holding number, and then register their animals with the Animal and Plant Health Agency. Every animal must be marked with official ID tags, and all livestock movements must be recorded and reported using approved forms. If animals are moved for sale, for slaughter, or even between farms, it triggers further paperwork. Transport them over 65 kilometres, as many farms must as more and more abattoirs close, then that's another special authorisation and haulier certification. If the animal is to be slaughtered for sale, the rules multiply. The farmer must log all medicine use and vaccines as per Veterinary Medicines Directorate standards, complete food chain information forms for the Food Standards Agency, the FSA, and potentially have the animal inspected in advance by an authorised vet. Slaughter itself can only be carried out by someone holding a certificate of competence under the welfare of animals at the time of killing regulations, and the carcass must then be health marked after inspection by an FSA official vet, for which the processor is charged by the hour. Even after all that, offal, hides and other byproducts are regulated separately under the animal byproduct rules, often with disposal costs that exceed their market value. That is the regulatory burden on a small-scale producer. Multiple agencies, overlapping rules, and no distinction between a local farm shop and a multinational meat processor. This is not proportionate regulation. It is bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake. And it is not only putting small farmers out of business and small abattoirs, but our rural culture and heritage at risk of extinction. Small abattoirs don't need favours. They need fairness. Given all the pain this government has inflicted upon the agricultural community, it's time our farmers were finally given a chance to succeed. So I beg the Minister, please ease these regulations before the final small abattoirs close and it is too late.
Ben Lake.
Thank you, It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I should also like to congratulate the honourable member for Somerton and Glastonbury and Somerton even, for securing this very important debate. And as we've already heard, Sir Desmond, the situation for abattoirs in general in Wales is just as stark. We've seen the number of operational red meat abattoirs in Wales drop from some 60 in the year 1990 down to just 17 as of last year. And as other members have already outlined so eloquently, the importance of small abattoirs in particular cannot be understated for our rural economies. The honourable member for Glastonbury and Somerton underlined just how important small abattoirs are as a cog in a vital supply chain for the rural economy. And I think we shouldn't forget that if we were to lose more of our small abattoirs, and many of them are facing extinction, as it were, we would also see the demise of the surrounding agricultural industry. And in areas such as Ceredigion and Preseli, in which agriculture is a key pillar of the local economy, we will also be looking at quite an economic hit for the wider population. So the importance of maintaining the network of small abattoirs in particular, and in the hope of expanding that network in future through government support, is really quite important and urgent for us to do. The honourable lady who just spoke mentioned just the disproportionate amount of regulatory burdens that small abattoirs must face. And that is a complaint and an experience that is echoed by constituents of mine who run a very small abattoir near Tregaron, Cigoen, Caron. They provide an invaluable service to local farmers, not only for providing the private kill services that allow them to diversify their income and to build their businesses in a way that larger operators simply do not offer them, but they also ensure high animal welfare standards and also cater to a variety of farming models. It's already been said that larger operators seldom offer multi-species or rare breed services. Small abattoirs fill that gap in the market, if you like. And if we were to lose small abattoirs, then a number of business models that are currently so important in all parts of the United Kingdom, including my own, will become unviable. It's also important to note that if we were to lose more small abattoirs, the distance that even more farmers must travel to take their animals to slaughter will increase. Average journey times are already unacceptable, and for all the added stress and animal welfare concerns, including the carbon footprint, as has already been mentioned. But in terms of the situation in Wales, we also need to ensure that the existing very small network of proud, many cases family-run small abattoirs are supported. The Welsh Government has responsibility in terms of supporting infrastructure development, and so I'm not going to ask the Minister to help us in that regard. But one thing that the UK Government can help small abattoirs in Wales is this cost of regulation and the inspection regime undertaken by the Food Standards Agency. Cigoen Caron has approached me in recent years to explain the pressure that this added cost places on their business. And more recently, with I think an 18% increase to their costs, the importance of retaining the small abattoir discount is even more pressing. And so I would welcome any reassurances that the Minister can offer us today that that discount will not only be retained, but that the Government will also consider, with an open mind, expanding that discount for the smallest abattoirs, because in recognition that the general costs are increasing as well. So Desmond, if we want to maintain a diverse and geographically sparse and accessible network of abattoirs, we need to ensure that government supports the network of small abattoirs in this country. I do think that if the government is serious about treating this as the key piece of infrastructure that it is, and let us not forget, it is critical for our farming businesses and rural economies, then government support through grants to improve infrastructure, but also support with the regulatory burdens is well overdue. And I, for one, would welcome the government if they were to entertain and make welcome moves in that direction.
And can I thank the member for Glastonbury and Somerton for securing this important debate. Well, I've been contacted by several farmers in my constituency who have raised concerns over the threat to small-scale abattoirs. They've expressed to me how vital these abattoirs are to their businesses and asked me to take part in this debate to share their challenges that have come as a result of the disappearance and fears for the future of small-scale abattoirs. Can I also thank the Brighton Hove Food Partnership and the Wealdon Food Partnership for their local research on this matter. Small-scale farms go hand in hand with small-scale abattoirs, as they offer the flexibility that those small farms need to rear a diverse range of breeds and, in Sussex's case, to support conservation efforts to restore a rare and highly diverse habitat. Because in East Sussex, we are incredibly fortunate to have one of the rarest habitats in the UK, chalk grasslands. These grasslands have been formed over thousands of years and have created the conditions for a rich, biodiverse ecosystem of rare plants and animals. The South Downs National Park Authority highlight that you can find up to 30 to 40 different species within 1 square metre. However, since World War II, the UK has seen an 80% reduction in these chalk grasslands, making their conservation an important local issue, as the last remaining areas are under threat from spreading scrub, including nettles, hawthorns and brambles. Local farmers can support these crucial and rare grasslands through a process known as conservation grazing and are considered an important tool in local efforts. Conservation grazing is the practice of using primarily native breeds of grass-grazing livestock to selectively graze out problem or invasive species, most often without the need for supplementary feeding. This gives the opportunity for our chalk grasslands to start growing instead of continuing to shrink. However, the native breed animals needed to do this are typically smaller and less homogenised than the products we're used to seeing in supermarkets. Most large-scale abattoirs only sell directly to wholesale and supermarkets, which creates a number of problems. Supermarkets have very clear specifications of what they consider to be an acceptable cut of meat. Often, the native breed animals, which farmers would use in conservation grazing, will not be accepted by supermarkets as they produce too small or varying cuts, meaning large-scale abattoirs will not accept these livestock in the first place. Farmers are then restricted in the breeds that they can rear. And large abattoirs usually do not allow farmers to reclaim their meat to sell locally. If farmers are able to sell their own meat, they're also often able to make a small premium which tells the story of their farm and recognises the slow and sustainable pace at which these animals were grown. This is where small-scale abattoirs, such as Downland Traditional Meats, come in. This abattoir is in Henfield in West Sussex, the constituency of my colleague Andrew Griffith, who I know has been doing his best to support them. It provides a service which is essential to local farmers in my constituency and across Sussex. This abattoir is willing to accept those native livestock species and allow farmers to get their meat back. Sadly, like many small-scale abattoirs, Downland Traditional Meats faces potential closure due to a range of different factors. Some are specific to their circumstances, however, there are pressures which are outside of their immediate control. One pressure, as has been mentioned by other members, is an uplift in the FSA hourly rates for official vets and meat hygiene inspectors visiting meat premises for the 25-26 financial year, which on average is close to 20%. It's true that the very smallest abattoirs have discounts on these rates, which have remained, but for those abattoirs in the middle bands, there's been a decrease in the discounts from 26 to 17% and 14 to 6% respectively. This puts immense financial pressure onto already tight margins. Without small-scale abattoirs, local farmers and businesses will have to start reconsidering practices such as conservation grazing, or alternatively, start looking further afield into other parts of England, but this comes with its own consequences. Because whatever their size and makeup, there are good reasons to have a good spread of abattoirs across the country so that all farmers are reasonably close to one. In this regard, the south of England already has a disadvantage compared to the rest of the country, as there are so few abattoirs of any kind. Only Scotland has fewer per square mile. Using more distant abattoirs would mean an increased length of time for livestock to be in transit. This is a great concern to farmers in my constituency, as their livestock will have to be placed in bigger lorries and travel larger distances. Long journeys increase stress in animals as they're exposed to crowded conditions, noisy vehicles, vibrations, a lack of food and water or space to rest, and fluctuating temperatures. On an economic point for farmers, the cost of increased transportation will further cut into their tight margins, making an already costly business even more expensive and perhaps for some unviable. The last government recognised the importance of small abattoirs and the role they play in providing a route for farmers to market for rare and native breeds, which is why they launched the £4 million Smaller Abattoir Fund to boost the sustainability and efficiency of red meat and poultry abattoirs across England. This fund awarded capital grants from £2,000 up to a maximum of £60,000 to help smaller abattoirs across England improve productivity, enhance animal health and welfare, add value to primary products and encourage innovation and invest in new technologies. 6 months later, after the launch, recognising further pressures, the government increased the maximum grant value to £70,000. Meanwhile, this Labour government has instead introduced devastating changes to inheritance tax laws through their cruel family farm tax, which would mean many small farms will have to sell land to so-called larger super farms who may not have the same sense of guardianship over the land as our smaller local farmers. So I'll ask a number of questions to the Minister as I finish. Firstly, given the increased costs, what assessments have they made of reform to which professions can conduct the necessary welfare checks? Are they confident that only a vet can fulfil all of the duties currently fulfilled by vets at that increased cost? Secondly, what plans are there for further direct funding support for small abattoirs? And finally, what assessment has the government made of the impact of the fee increase, and can they commit to freezing fees for next year? I welcome the opportunity to have been able to raise these concerns on behalf of farmers in my constituency, and I look forward to the Minister providing the concrete plans and reassurances I know my local farmers are seeking.
Liberal Democrat spokesman David Chadwick.
Thank you, Sir Desmond. It's a privilege to serve under your chairmanship today. And I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Glastonbury and Somerton for bringing forward this important debate and making such a compelling case for the importance of small abattoirs for the whole rural economy. Support for small abattoirs is vital, not just in my own constituency, but across rural communities throughout Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The challenges these facilities face are symptomatic of broader issues in our food infrastructure, rural economies and national food strategy. The Liberal Democrats reaffirmed our commitment to this cause by passing a motion at our 2025 Spring Conference. That motion recognised the essential role that small abattoirs play in maintaining high animal welfare standards, standards that British and Welsh farmers are rightly proud of and which consumers increasingly expect. But we cannot ignore the facts. Over the last 30 years, the number of abattoirs in the UK has plummeted. Between 2018 and 2022 alone, the number of smaller red meat abattoirs fell by 25% and small poultry abattoirs by an alarming 40%. These closures are being driven by rising costs and mounting regulatory burdens, pressures that smaller facilities are ill-equipped to absorb. Yet the decline comes at a tremendous cost to animal welfare, to rural economies, to local food resilience and to consumer choice. Beginning with animal welfare, a topic that's been raised several times already today, small abattoirs dramatically reduce food miles by offering lower local slaughter options. This is not a minor detail. It means animals spend less time in transit, endure less stress and arrive at slaughter in better condition. Slaughtering animals as close as possible to where they are reared is a principle that should be central to any ethical food infrastructure. There's also a very strong economic case. Small abattoirs support rural economies by providing jobs and anchoring local supply chains. So, Desmond, they keep value within communities and help producers secure higher value sales through direct-to-consumer sales. There's rising demand for high-quality Welsh meat. Several farmers in my constituency are doing a roaring trade in setting up their own meat box businesses. I'll be picking up mine from Geraint this weekend. And the government should encourage this welcome trend because it helps to address the imbalance of power in our food system. Large abattoirs are often contractually tied to supermarkets and cannot return small quantities back to individual producers. In my own constituency, W.J. George Butchers in Talgarth exemplifies the value added by independent abattoirs. This family-owned business has been serving our local community for over 135 years. Their model is rooted in those local relationships mentioned previously. Animals are selected directly from trusted farms, processed on-site and sold with full traceability. And it's precisely this level of quality, integrity and traceability that consumers want and small abattoirs can deliver. Beyond the local economy, there are national implications. In recent weeks, we've seen large supply chains, such as those used by M&S and the Co-op, hacked and disrupted, which illustrates the fragility of over-centralised systems dominated by the big corporations. Small abattoirs offer resilience in the supply chain. They distribute risk, reduce dependence on long-haul logistics, and provide extra capacity in our food infrastructure. That's not only good for business, it's good for national food security. But while the need for support is clear, recent government action has fallen short. The previous Conservative government omitted small abattoirs entirely from their food strategy. And this new Labour government, despite its manifesto commitment to uphold the highest animal welfare standards, has yet to replace the Small Abattoir Fund, which was closed in September 2024. In Wales, the situation is even worse, and the Welsh Labour government has not provided support for small abattoirs for many years. To compound matters, the Food Standards Agency imposed a 20% increase in meat inspection fees this April. This is a crushing burden for already struggling small operators. And if we're serious about encouraging ethical and sustainable farming, we must stop penalising the very facilities that make that possible. I would urge the government to consider authorising mobile slaughterhouses, which could play a key role in reaching isolated areas and reducing infrastructure costs. I hope the Minister might offer an update on the progress of such plans with the Food Standards Agency in his response to this debate. And there's scope as well for smarter regulation. With the help of recent technological advances in monitoring and traceability, it may be time to explore a lighter touch regulatory framework for small abattoirs, one that maintains safety and quality, but reduces compliance costs that disproportionately affect these smaller facilities. And finally, we must improve food labelling. Customers want transparency. Now more than ever, they want to know how an animal was raised, where, and then the information from that helps to empower consumers and create a more informed, value-driven market. So Desmond, in conclusion, small abattoirs are community assets. They support high animal welfare, reduce food miles, sustain rural economies, provide producers with added value, and increase our food system's resilience. The Liberal Democrats will continue to champion their cause, and I will join my honourable colleagues in calling on the government to replace the Small Abattoir Fund, to consult meaningfully with the sector, and to back the infrastructure and regulatory reform needed to keep these vital operations thriving. In doing so, we uphold not just animal welfare, but the health and sustainability of our entire food system.
It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And can I also thank the honourable member for Glastonbury and Somerton for securing this incredibly important debate. Because as has been indicated by all contributions, we all realise that small abattoirs are a vital part of our food supply chain and therefore a vital part of our food national security. The benefits brought about by encouraging a diverse range of abattoirs of all sizes is incredibly important, not only for food supply, but in terms of supporting the rural economy. Farming businesses rely upon them, and if they are not there, opportunity for our farmers and our rural economy is significantly reduced, as it is for the consumer. With regards to businesses, small abattoirs bring greater market competition, helping our farmers secure the best price for their produce. They also often provide specialist services, such as slaughter for horned cattle or outdoor pigs, something not always offered by larger establishments, as has been picked up by contributions made in this debate. Something not always massively highlighted by other members in this House, but the small opportunities that small abattoirs provide is incredibly important for many of our farming community. Private kill services, which are increasingly relied upon by our farmers looking to diversify, are also a speciality of our smaller abattoirs. And with regards to animal welfare, smaller abattoirs are well suited to ensuring each animal receives humane treatment, and by reducing travel distances, animals arrive less stressed than they would have by taking a longer journey. Indeed, those lower travel distances also cut down on haulage costs and emissions of our meat sector, something that was indicated through the intervention by my honourable friend, the member for Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk. And in rural communities across the country, small abattoirs ensure that those businesses, that more businesses done locally by providing jobs and local supply of produce for businesses further down the supply chain. But we have unfortunately seen a decline in small and medium-sized abattoirs across the country, with areas such as northern Scotland, northern England and the South East in particular experiencing short supply of those small abattoirs. And a survey of farm businesses recently showed that 51% of respondents had to find new abattoirs after the closure of their original provider. And we know that between 2018 and 2022, smaller red meat abattoirs declined by around 25%, and smaller poultry abattoirs declined around 40%. And a survey that was undertaken by the National Craft Butchers indicated that 59% of abattoirs processing less than 1,000 livestock units a year would close within 2 to 5 years without any government intervention. And in 2023, this analysis was on track, unfortunately. But the government, the previous administration, decided to enact on that by introducing the smaller abattoir fund. But the costs to our smaller abattoirs is significantly increased through energy costs, which has been indicated, often being much higher for those smaller abattoirs, the employer's national insurance increase, the minimum wage increase, and the challenges around skills is increasing those challenges. But during the last government, the previous administration understood this and delivered the £4 million fund through the small abattoir fund, with 42% of eligible businesses applying. This delivered critical infrastructure, investment into the sector, making it more productive, improving produce quality and animal welfare standards. And of course, I would urge the government to continue with this fund rolling out, because what this fund specifically did was it provided funds of between £4,000 and up to £60,000, providing an intervention. But then this was increased from an intervention rate of 40% to 50%, with the upper limit increasing to £75,000 to cover off some of those challenges. But there are some specific issues that have also been picked up by other colleagues in their contributions, not least my honourable friend for Bexhill and Battle, who has specifically referenced the challenges within the south east of the country. And I know that he and indeed the honourable member for Arundel and South Downs has had specific challenges associated with their abattoir in Henfield. And I know that the Right Honourable member for Arundel and South Downs met with the Chief Executive of Horsham District Council and managed to secure a £300,000 grant to specifically help with keeping that abattoir open. But this just illustrates the very nature of the challenge when we have had the employer's national insurance, the additional costs associated with energy, the additional costs associated with running a smaller abattoir being exacerbated, and therefore sometimes there is need for that government intervention to assist. But we also need to get to a position of fairness throughout the whole of the supply chain, and that was quite rightly indicated by my honourable friend for the Weald of Kent, that farmers actually want fairness, not favours. And therefore, if we are able to get to a position where there is fairness within the supply chain, there is fairness sometimes in terms of government intervention to do with helping those smaller abattoirs that are providing a much better level of service to our rural economy, rather than farmers having to rely on those larger abattoirs, sometimes intervention helps. And therefore, I just reiterate the calls on the government to have the smaller abattoir fund rolled out. Again, we also delivered the Animal Welfare Livestock Export Act, which banned the export of live animals for slaughter. Not only did this end the often inhumane practice, but provided further reassurance for the sector. And going forward, the first thing that the government could do is unequivocally recognise the importance of smaller abattoirs, primarily focusing on the supply chain and ensuring that this is encompassed within the government's food strategy going forward, and that abattoirs are included within that. Part of this review should include looking closely at a second round of not only the smaller abattoir fund, but looking at whether or not there are circumstances for smaller abattoirs not needing to have the additional cost implications in terms of energy costs. And I would also therefore like to ask the Minister what plans he has for regulatory reform within the abattoir sector. At the same time, when the government is advocating for greater alignment with Europe, does he recognise that in many of the EU directives still in force in this country, that they did great damage for our smaller abattoirs? There is also growing concern over the financial burden placed on our smaller abattoirs by the Food Standard Agency, something that has also been referenced by members' contributions. So what steps is the Minister taking to ensure that those smaller abattoirs in particular are not disproportionately affected by the rising costs of inspections? And more broadly, what is he doing to ensure that the SFA delivers value for money? Because what has quite rightly been raised in this debate is the acknowledgement of the increased charging around the SFA's rollout of the increased charges, because in March 2025 this uplift, which is impacting our smaller abattoirs, is directly impacting this and indeed next financial year. And we quite rightly on this side of the House agree with the NFU in that further pressure upon the small and medium-sized abattoirs that are struggling with these additional costs and regulatory burdens has been exacerbated by the SFA's implications of the additional charging. So, and furthermore, we would like to seek clarity from the government on what they intend to do around the 5% rule that would significantly reduce the regulatory burden for the smallest abattoirs. As we know, this enables smaller abattoirs to slaughter, or if it was in place, up to 5% of the total national throughput without triggering a full veterinary presence, and therefore the additional charges associated with, if they're going above the 1,000 units, additional costs associated with having those veterinary officers present. So could the government indicate what their intentions are around the 5% rule? The government must also consider the benefits to small abattoirs in terms of food labelling reviews going forward, and therefore could the Minister outline what the government's intentions are in regards to this, because better consumer awareness through food labelling would help smaller abattoirs sell their produce as more humane, more local and better placed for the consumer. And therefore I'd appreciate the government's outline in that. So to summarise, Sir Desmond, our rural economy has had additional pressures not only put on through the family farm tax, the removal of the SFI, the de-linked payments dramatically reducing to 7,200, but they are also further being hit by the dramatic reduction in small abattoirs and their availability to be able to slaughter their produce at a local facility. And therefore I call on the government not only to roll out the additional incentives nationally through the smaller abattoir fund, but also take on board the many contributions that have been raised in today's debate, so that you can make sure that our farmers and our rural economy continue to thrive.
Minister.
Thank you, Sir Desmond. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair. And may I start by thanking the honourable member for Glastonbury and Somerton for securing this debate and also delivering a very, I thought, thorough and thoughtful introduction to a subject that matters deeply to all those who have spoken today and to many of us across the House. And I'm also grateful to the very thoughtful contributions we've heard from a range of members today. But let me also start by expressing thanks to the UK meat processing industry in general in all they do to provide us with products that meet high human health, environmental and animal welfare standards and support our domestic food supply chain and strong export market. In 2024, this sector was worth some £12 billion. Now, we're concentrating today, obviously, on the small abattoir sector. Over 93% of meat is actually slaughtered in the larger slaughterhouses. But this is, as has been outlined by members, a very important sector, particularly for dealing with rare breeds and achieving those premium outcomes I think we all want to see supported. And I think all those who have spoken so far have made a strong case for the importance of small abattoirs, because they do contribute to economic growth in rural communities, they do provide skilled employment opportunities, and they absolutely do offer an outlet to market for those who farm rare and native breeds. And they also, as has been also said, promote animal welfare by maintaining shorter journey times to slaughter. Now, I think we've all been aware that this has been an issue for a number of years, and of course also aware that over the last few years, and we've heard a number of them referenced, a number of smaller abattoirs have closed. But I think it's also worth pointing out that a number of them work very effectively as well. and they've shown remarkable adaptability and resilience. We saw that during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen that during disease outbreaks, and I think we've all heard and understand the crucial role they play in agricultural community. And when one looks at the map of where they are, there is still a spread, although quite clearly there are areas of the country which are particularly challenged. Now, the point's been raised by a number of members around the Food Standards Agency's ongoing evaluation of the current discount scheme for meat inspection charges. While obviously some of these issues are for the Food Standards Agency, it's also for me as the Minister to have a view. And while it's necessary to periodically review such schemes, I absolutely recognise the importance of the discount scheme to smaller abattoirs moving forward and the contribution that the industry can make to the evaluation process. That's an important point raised by the Honourable Lady from Glastonbury and Somerton, and also by our colleague from Ceredigion and Prezelli, who's had to go into the main chamber. Further to the call for evidence in autumn last year, the Food Standards Agency has recently hosted several engagement sessions to provide stakeholders with an opportunity to share their views on discounts. So there is an ongoing discussion about this and how it should be structured in future. My understanding from those discussions is that there was positive engagement and that the information that was gathered from those sessions will inform future proposals. So I can assure honourable members that this government will continue to engage with the sector on those wider priorities, concerns and opportunities, and we will use some of the well-established forums. Again, some of them were referenced in the speeches we've heard earlier, the Small Abattoir Working Group and the Small Abattoirs Task and Finish Group. And I'm very grateful to the members of these groups. They provide a valuable opportunity for government to collaborate with stakeholders on finding, where possible, practical solutions to the priority challenges they've identified and support our shared ambition for future resilience and growth. And I was checking earlier that they've had meetings in recent times in March and January, and I'm looking closely at the suggestions that they bring forward. Now, one of the areas we've been working closely with the industry and the Food Standards Agency is looking at this issue as to how we can reduce regulatory and administrative burdens within the framework the wider abattoir sector operates within. And we do have to get the right balance, because clearly we need to make sure that proper standards are maintained. We also need to make sure the regulation is appropriate and proportionate. And I absolutely hear the point that is made that it often seems that there's a disproportionate impact on the smaller abattoirs, which is hard for them to meet because of their size. Actions have been taken already and will continue to be taken. The introduction of the Reduced Administration Initiative, which aims at removing certain daily administrative tasks for food business operators. The Food Standards Agency escalation process, which is designed to help abattoirs quickly raise and resolve operational issues. And I can pledge that we will continue to work collaboratively with the industry, focusing on evaluating the feasibility of other potential flexibilities, including relaxing post-mortem checks within smaller abattoirs. Now, I'm also aware of the impact that recent disease outbreaks have had on the sector. The spread of diseases means that it's sometimes necessary to implement restriction zones within which abattoirs must be designated to receive animals for slaughter from within the restriction zone. Again, I appreciate and understand the difficulties that can place on both farmers and processors, and we've made this process as simple as possible by working closely with the Food Standards Agency and Food Standards Scotland. Before turning to some of the other actions the government is taking, I'd just like the opportunity to use this debate today to pose a few questions perhaps for us all to consider, some of which have already been raised by honourable members, about how we can raise awareness about the vital role smaller abattoirs play in maintaining the UK's food supply, how we can work with local butcheries and farm shops in promoting the added value that, as we've heard from others, is made to primary products. Also to look at the rural employment opportunities that are provided for skilled workers while continuing to innovate and use new technology to drive efficiencies and productivity. Because I genuinely believe this is a sector that has a good story to tell. So, from the government's point of view, very happy to take an intervention.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way, and he's absolutely right to highlight the importance of supporting local food production and ensuring that consumers here in the UK buy local. I just wonder how that stacks up with what President Trump has just said, where he said this new UK-US trade deal will include billions of dollars of increased market access for American exports, especially in agriculture, dramatically increasing access for American beef, ethanol and virtually all the products produced by our great farmers. How does that fit with encouraging people to buy British products?
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for using the opportunity to shoehorn in a wider issue into the debate this afternoon. I would encourage him to look more closely at the details of the... I would encourage him to look more closely at the details as presented by the UK government, which is a very reliable source of information. I couldn't possibly comment, and I will return to the issue of small abattoirs. But what I can assure him is that this government is absolutely committed to making sure that we uphold the very high standards we have in this country, and that is what we have achieved through that agreement. Now, in returning to small abattoirs, we are working to modernise statutory livestock traceability services, and that should make a big difference over the next 2 to 3 years, making it less burdensome for all actors in the supply chain to report the movement of animals into their premises. And as we advance these opportunities, we've been working with the industry to identify ways of helping alleviate the pressures that smaller abattoirs face with the disposal of animal byproducts and also with labour supply, again points raised in the opening speeches. And we'll continue to work closely with industry to explore potential solutions. We are also, to further support economic growth, remain committed to harnessing the purchasing power of the procurement supply chain to set the tone in delivering our wider ambitions on sustainability, animal welfare and health. And we have an ambition to supply half of all food into the public sector from local producers or those certified to higher environmental standards in line with our World Trade Organization and domestic procurement obligations. And for the first time ever, as announced at the Oxford Farming Conference in January by the Secretary of State, the government will review the food currently bought in the public sector and where it's bought from. This work will be a significant first step to inform future changes to public sector food procurement policies, helping make it an equal playing field for British producers to bid into the £5 billion annual spend each year on public sector catering contracts. Also, as announced by the Secretary of State, we're committed to streamlining planning processes for agricultural infrastructure through the government's planned consultation on the National Planning Policy Framework. And this will give us the opportunity to consult on reforms to expedite the construction of essential farm infrastructure, such as buildings, barns and other facilities necessary for boosting food production, while also improving environmental sustainability. As Minister for Food Security and Rural Affairs, I'm absolutely committed to helping smaller abattoirs succeed, take advantage of the opportunities available to them by continuing to support the meat industry where and when we're able to do so. And to support employment in the meat processing sector, and this is a point that was raised again by a number of speakers, this government is taking firm action to address the challenges we've identified through our engagement with the meat processing sector. We're reforming the apprenticeships offer into a new growth and skills offer, which will provide greater flexibility to employers and learners and align with the industrial strategy. And that will include shorter duration apprenticeships and new foundation apprenticeships for young people in targeted growing sectors. This will help more people learn high quality skills at work and fuel innovation in businesses across the country. And the government will set out our plans for further steps and detailed information on the growth and skills offer in due course, based on the findings of Skills England's engagement over the autumn with key partners, including employers and training providers. And as part of our commitment to strengthening vital sectors across the agricultural and food industries, we've also announced measures to provide stability to farmers and workers in the UK's poultry sector. In February, the government announced a 5-year extension to the seasonal workers visa until the end of 2030, ensuring a reliable pipeline of workers for farms. As in previous years, 2,000 visas have been allocated specifically for seasonal poultry workers, and annual quota reviews will balance farm support with reducing reliance on seasonal migrant labour, helping farms grow with stability and confidence. Now, turning to funding, despite the ongoing financial challenges posed by a very tight public purse, we've committed £5 billion to farming budget over 2 years, with the largest ever investment directed at sustainable food production and nature recovery. And whilst capital investment will not solve every problem, we do plan to simplify simplify and rationalise grant funding, ensuring that grants deliver the best benefits for food security and nature. And we're currently working to agree our capital settlement as part of the spending review. And once agreed, we will consider how best to use capital to achieve outcomes. So Desmond, in closing, I'd like to again put on record my thanks to the meat processing sector and specifically smaller abattoirs for their continued commitment to supplying the nation with healthy and wholesome food. This government stands with them, and I look forward to continuing to work with the sector to build a stronger and more secure future for British agriculture and food production.
Sarah Dyke to wind up.
Thank you, Sir Desmond. I'd like to thank the Honourable and Right Honourable members here today for their contributions, very much appreciated, and I heard very clearly the passion that you have about supporting your farmers in your areas. It's been made abundantly clear by the contributions that small and local abattoirs form a crucial and important part of the local food infrastructure, but they need support from the government. And it falls upon DEFRA to define where they sit in their plans for the future of farming. And how they will ensure we have a local network of abattoirs across the country going forward, because they are severely at risk. I thank the Minister for his words today. There were nuggets, I think, of good news in there. I would like to think that we would have some further clarity on this funding and what that landscape would look like sooner rather than later, because we know that agriculture will only face more shocks as we move forward, and we've got to tackle that now and to make sure that farming in the future is resilient and farmers are able to secure their businesses going forward. And to be able to be resilient, we need to ensure that infrastructure is there supporting our farmers. So I hope that he sees the opportunity to work with the small abattoir sector to safeguard their future and ensure that local food infrastructure is as resilient as possible, because rural communities across the country rely on small abattoirs, whether it's the farmers, retailers, butchers, pubs, restaurants, hotels, and we must make sure they are there to serve customers and help feed the nation. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered potential merits of government support for small abattoirs. As many are of that opinion, say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.